one of the challenges that I often hear about is enough candidates, getting enough candidates. Hiring managers, what do you need in order to fill your opening? Because the longer your opening remains open, the more money you are losing in opportunity cost and the higher stress you're going to have in doing your job. So one of the challenges that I often hear about is enough candidates, getting enough candidates, and it is a candidates market, and increasingly so for the last several years now. So what does it mean that it's a candidates market? It means that candidates have opportunities. So if you get a resume and have a good interview with a solid candidate and you want them to move forward, you want to keep them engaged throughout the interview process, and you also want to communicate and set expectations. So what do I mean by that? A lot of times I will see kind of quick, fast-moving, sometimes even haphazard interview processes where the details of what the hiring manager is looking for the next specific interview is not communicated to the candidate or to the recruiter for the recruiter to then communicate to the candidate. So a lot of times, yes, we want to see what a candidate can do. We want to assess their intangible skills, and there are certain questions that you want to and can ask throughout the interview process to kind of tease that out and vet that out. But for those hot buttons, those really important questions, maybe processes, maybe if it is, for example, a leadership candidate and you want to understand their hiring profile and their hiring process, because this is a very important piece in leadership, then you want to let them know what you're going to be looking for. Set the expectation. Okay, candidate, for this next interview, here's what we're going to be looking for. If you can come prepared and ready to present XYZ, let them know. And that's important because you're just like you would not show up to a customer meeting or to an interview or a meeting in general unprepared. Your star candidate does not want to show up unprepared either. And the more you progress throughout the interview process, if it is a good fit, if it's looking to be a good fit on both sides, the more that candidate is going to want to prepare, is going to want to invest. So they might have some general ideas, of course, on how to prepare for an interview, and also the recruiter can help in that as well. But you know the specifics that are going to be most important to you, hiring manager, in your role. So let the candidate know that so that they can do their due diligence and prepare. And what you can do is communicate the interview process. First of all, you want to establish the ideal interview process for your team, company, and or division, and then you can communicate that to the recruiter up front so that they have the step-by-step process. Of course, sometimes there might be some changes there, and that's okay, but you want to have a general process locked in, and you want to communicate that to your recruiter. And maybe if one of the steps is a presentation, you can even let the recruiter know just once at the start of the search the details of what you're going to be looking for, so that they can then relay that to each candidate, and that will save you a lot of time later on your calendar and throughout the interview process. And if there are certain documents that you're going to want the candidate to review or they're going to need in order to prepare for that next step in the interview process, you can also send that information to their recruiter so that they've got everything organized and ready to go up front, and your recruiter can really be a great partner to help you in saving time and in preparing candidates to keep them moving forward. I'll give you a couple of examples, a good example and a not so good example. So let's start with the not so great example. I was working with a candidate that I had recruited for a leadership opening. This was a high level opening over probably 15, or maybe it's been a little while, maybe leading a team of 15 or 20. And so for far along, maybe the last step or second to last step in the interview process, the internal recruiter sent the candidate many clinical studies to review, just with a note saying, please prepare and be ready to talk on these clinical papers. And the candidate called me and said, Amy, I'm really interested in this opportunity, and if I didn't have a job and responsibilities leading my current team right now, I could prepare, read all of these journals and be prepared to speak to them, because I think it was 30 clinical papers. But he wanted to pull out of the interview process because he said, I don't have the time to do this. If it were just, one or two, then I could do that. Or again, if I weren't working, then yes, I can do this. So I kind of talked him off a ledge there and said, okay, hang tight. Would you please bear with me? Let me reach back out to the company and my contact at the company and see if we can get some clearer communication. And I did, and was given the instruction, no, he doesn't need to read all 30 peer-reviewed studies. He can just pick and choose a couple and research and read and be ready to be prepared to speak on those. And that's what we're looking for. Well, we had no idea and the candidate had no idea, because that was not communicated. So this is an example of how you could potentially lose out on a really great candidate due to lack of communication. Because remember, we want to keep in mind the day in the life of the candidate. Those high value candidates that you want for your opening likely have a current role to prioritize. And if it's a leadership role, they're going to be super busy, of course, managing their team. Yes, they want to prioritize your role as well. And in order to best help them do that, you want to set expectations and communicate. So I took that information back to the candidate. He said, okay, I can definitely do that. And we moved him forward, and he got an offer. Now, what could have happened on the other end, because he didn't even want me to go back to the company. He said, no, I think they're really great. I think it's a great company. I think I'd get along really well with the VP, but I don't feel comfortable letting them know that I don't feel comfortable pushing back on this. But I was able to kind of talk him into letting me reach out and see if I could get some clearer communication, and so that it ended up working in our favor. But with the market being a candidates market, you cannot afford to have your high value star candidates dropping out of the process, because what happens is your opening remains open, and the more money you are losing in opportunity cost. And not only can making a bad hire lead to a very, very costly mistake, but even delays in filling your opening. If it's taking a month is a pretty normal timeline, pretty standard, but if it's taking a quarter to get your opening filled, how much are you losing in potential opportunity costs? So it is so important to keep the candidate in mind, and you really want to communicate to them and set expectations so that they can come prepared. Because again, the candidate that you want is not going to want to show up to a meeting unprepared. So give them a chance to prepare. So certain questions you can ask without preparing them to better understand those intangible skill sets that you're looking for. But those strategic, really wanting to understand their SMART goal planning, or how they hire or how they present, prepare them with what they need in order to do that, to show you how and who they hire, what their process is, what their presentation skills are. Arm them with the tools so that they can then take the time to prepare. And again, utilize your recruiter to communicate the information to the candidate from as you go throughout the process. So that way you don't have to spend your time, hiring manager, doing that, educating the candidate or giving them the information that they need to help them best prepare. Use your recruiter for that. It'll save you time. Now, a positive example, one of the best results that I've ever been able to deliver with recruiting was for a 10-role expansion. And one of the reasons that this search was so dialed in and resulted in great success, meaning I think 90% of those candidates, a lot of them are still with the company now, and that has been years now, but I think 90% were promoted as planned and also stayed with the company 2 or more years. I think one left after about a year and a half. But anyhow, part of what contributed to that being such a great success in finding the right team members for that expansion is the process, and then of course the communication. So the process was dialed in from the start, and it was communicated to me, and all of the information that the candidates were going to need to prepare, as far as contacts for proactive outreach to reps on the team as part of the step in the interview process, was given to me. So I had those reps contacts so that I could then give that to each candidate. And then also the final presentation, the final step in the interview process was a panel presentation. And all of that information was given to me and explained to me in a detailed phone call with one of the managers. So I had all of the information, and then I could then give that to the candidate and educate them so they had an opportunity to prepare. And as a result, the candidates had what they needed to move forward, to prepare and present themselves in their best light. And this kept them staying in the process, because when your candidates are falling out of the process, it just delays the process, and you are starting, it's this continuous loop of starting over again, because then maybe you only have, maybe you had 6 candidates, but the communication and or process wasn't there. So 4 of them dropped out and or took another opportunity. Remember, they're also being looked at by other companies. So if your process is confusing or haphazard, or the communication isn't there, just as you, hiring manager, are viewing the candidate with how they present throughout the process is how they will present in the role, they are doing the same with you, the hiring manager, and the company. So you want to communicate with your candidates and use your recruiter to help in that communication, to help save you time. And you want to set expectations so that they know how to prepare with those key hot buttons that are going to be really important to you to help you vet their candidacy. Let them know so that they can show up prepared. Thank you so much for watching. I hope that helped. Certainly reach out if you have any questions that I might be able to help you with. And until the next video, happy hiring.